Hey everyone, today let's talk about marriage law and prenuptial agreements. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome to Finance on Fire, where we talk all things early retirement. Subscribe and follow along as I document me and the future wifey's journey to early retirement. We have a 10-year plan, we're in year 2 right now. Today we're going to talk about the very enjoyable and sometimes sensitive topic of marriage law and prenuptial agreements. We got engaged early 2020, we were supposed to tie the knot August 8, 2020, but because of the shelter in place and the illness, everything got pushed down. We're going to have 2 ceremonies, one in 2020 and one in 2022. 2022 was the actual legal ceremony. Luckily for us, me and the wifey found the FIRE community. The FIRE community talks about financial independence and retiring earlier than average person. So instead of 40 years, we're talking about it in 10 years. And with that comes a lot of transparency between my finances and her finances. A book that helped us out a lot was Smart Couples Finish Rich by David Bach. And in there he talks about, how you have to be loving, trusting, and also transparent about finances. In that book, he actually recommends for each couple to have a prenuptial agreement. I know it is not a romantic topic, but the more I look into it, the more I feel really, really good about it. In fact, from what I've researched, it helps to strengthen your relationships and help to de-stress your relationship. Not only that, it brings more organization and more transparency into the relationship. I personally come from a divorced family, and also my future wife comes from a divorced family as well. It probably makes sense for us to talk about this. Let's be honest, no one has a crystal ball, no one can tell what the future looks like, and a lot of people has no understanding of what marriage implications are. In terms of law, financial implications and ramifications of divorce, no one understands that because no one wants to look at that side of the picture. What's funny though is when you buy a house, you buy a car, you make a big purchase, they make you look at that side. They make you get insurance for your car, they make you get insurance for your house, and they make you get even health insurance for yourself. You never want to use it, but you're glad it's there. I'm definitely not an expert. You definitely want to communicate with a lawyer of some sort if you have questions about marriage and how the laws apply to your future relationship. Whether you're married legally or common law married, a lot of the same protections apply. Some things like alimony, child support are all there. What's not automatic in a common law versus marriage law is the 50-50 split of assets. We can probably go down a rabbit hole of laws that apply in case of a split, but let's not do that today. High level, marriage law explicitly implies that if you were to divorce, 50-50 of the assets will be split no matter what, no negotiations. Common law and prenup would not automatically give you a 50-50 asset split. There's some negotiations and wiggle room there. A lot of people don't think about inheritance from their family. They don't think about their own personal lives and their own personal careers. They don't think about the impact of future kids. They don't think that, 50% of marriages actually end up in divorce. No one wants that, but no one believes that they'll be part of that statistic. But myself and also my future wife's family, we both come from families that are divorced. I was able to witness firsthand how divorce impacted my mother. I'm sure my future wife was able to see that firsthand, how that impacted her mother as well, both financially and emotionally. There's a lot of things to think about. As much as I can see my mother's side, I actually don't know my father's side. I never asked him. We don't have personal discussions about his emotions, his finances. I don't know how that affected or rippled through their life. I don't know if my future wife knows that about her father either, or even that much about the mother's side of the story either. What I'm trying to say is that there is major impact, and there's probably a lot of things that could have been done to mitigate emotional stress, financial stress, and just stress overall. There's a lot of things that you could put in place to protect themselves and also their spouse as well. I'm at a part of my life where I don't know what I don't know, and I need to know those things, not perfectly to make a decision, but just at least the basics, right? And that's one of the bad things about marriages, is that everyone only wants to look at the good side, and they never even want to talk about possible downsides or the bad things that can happen. To me, it's very important because you're entering into a lifelong contract. This contract is longer than your car mortgage, is longer than your house mortgage, is longer than anything you've ever signed in your life. And yes, even longer than your school loans. And your school loans probably play a part of that as well. With not knowing what I don't know, let's check out 1 or 2 videos to see some bird's-eye view of other people's take on marriage law and prenuptial agreements. Let's go. So I typed in marriage law, I couldn't find too much, so I typed in prenuptial agreements, and there's a little bit more content there. Let's check out the prenuptial agreements, the basics. Let's go. Findlegalforms.com. That's a good domain name.
He proposes, she accepts, and the date for marriage is set. The couple sits down to discuss the prenuptial agreement. Still fresh from the glow of romance, is it appropriate to think about the demise of the marriage?
That's funny.
Unfortunately, approximately 1/3 of all first marriages and nearly 1/2 of all second and third marriages will end in divorce.
Jeez.
So a prenuptial agreement may not only be practical, but necessary. This video is designed to provide you with some basic information to help you decide whether a prenuptial agreement is right for you and your future spouse. A prenuptial agreement is a private agreement between two people who intend to marry. The agreement sets out how the couple's assets and debts will be distributed in the event they divorce or one of them dies. Generally, the couple is given substantial leeway to divide their property as they see fit. You're probably asking yourself, why would someone choose to use a prenuptial agreement? Well, because without one, your assets will be divided according to your state's laws. With the prenuptial agreement, you are the one to choose how your assets will be divided. There are four basic rules that you should
Don't
know
give the
about
power
the
to the
prenuptial
state.
agreement. First, you and your partner must be completely honest about your assets and debts. If either of you hide something or lies to protect your interests, a judge can discard the agreement. Second, the prenuptial agreement must be signed significantly in advance of the wedding to avoid
Tell them about your Bitcoin
or coercion. Third, each of you should be represented by separate and independent legal counsel during the negotiation. Finally, the prenuptial agreement must be fair and reasonable. Now that we've covered the basics, let's cover a few other important issues. Dealing with the financial support of children can be one of the most difficult provisions when preparing your agreement. It's important that you don't attempt to waive child support payments or put strict limitations on providing it. Courts don't look kindly on efforts to circumscribe the rights of children, and attempts to do this will likely not be enforced. In these
They're
cases,
protected
the court
anyways.
itself may investigate what distributions and outcomes will be in the best interests of the child. You also have the option of including so-called lifestyle clauses. This may include any non-financial understanding that you wish to document before the marriage. You should note that the courts may not enforce what they believe to be frivolous provisions. For example, a provision that requires that one spouse not gain weight will probably be ignored. On the other hand, an agreement between the parties that their current or future
I've read
children
about
will be
this in
raised
Asia.
a certain religion may be considered. The key factor that will be considered by the courts is whether or not the parties have created a serious and meaningful clause. Now you know the basics and have taken the first step to creating a valid and enforceable prenuptial agreement.
What's interesting is the non-financial agreements, not gaining weight or not having kids that could be put in agreements. That's pretty interesting stuff. Let's check out one more video, shall we? Law Shelf Educational Media. We're just all reacting
Planning a wedding
here.
can be one of the most exciting yet challenging events in one's life. During this treasured time, neither party wants to think about the possibility of the marriage failing, though nearly half of all marriages in the United States end in divorce. It can be difficult for either party to bring up the topic of a prenuptial agreement. Still, the concern of potentially harming the romantic pre-marriage time period must be balanced against protecting each party's assets. Celebrities and high net worth individuals are the most frequent parties to prenuptial agreements. Prenuptial agreements allow them to protect their assets and to prevent highly publicized divorce proceedings. Still, prenuptial agreements can benefit people who are not rich or famous. This presentation will discuss the benefits of prenuptial agreements, information that should go into determining whether to sign a prenup, which provisions should be included, and the steps necessary to create an enforceable prenuptial agreement. A premarital or prenuptial agreement is an agreement entered into by two people who intend to marry. It sets forth the rights of each party to the property of the other in the event of divorce or death. It can also impact support rights and obligations, such as alimony upon divorce. While prenuptial agreements are sometimes associated with negative feelings, such as mistrust and lack of confidence in the marriage, they can also be viewed positively.
Yes.
The process of preparing to enter into the agreement is an opportunity for each party to better understand the finances of the other and to discuss other important issues relating to the marriage. Additionally, both parties can achieve the peace of mind knowing that once they enter the marriage, they will be protected if the union dissolves. Prenuptial agreements provide a roadmap that structures each party's finances according to a mutually accepted and predetermined plan.
Wow.
Since prenuptial agreements are centered around money and finances, it is important for each party to have a frank and honest conversation about debts and assets prior to entering a prenuptial agreement. The parties must address issues such as current property and debts, current and projected expenses, accounts with financial institutions, retirement plans, bills, financial goals, ownership in businesses, and credit ratings. According to the Uniform Premarital Agreement Act, which many states in the U.S. have adopted, parties to a prenuptial agreement can contract with respect to the parties' rights and obligations in property of either or both of them, the right to sell, buy, or lease property, the right to dispose of property upon separation, dissolution, death, or any event that can impact the marriage, the creation, modification, or elimination of spousal support if the marriage terminates, and the choice of law governing the prenuptial agreement. Parties writing a prenuptial agreement cannot contract for provisions regarding child custody, child support, parental rights and duties, and or visitation regarding the children of the marriage, foreclosure of rights to alimony, non-financial matters. Child custody cannot be contracted for in advance because the best interest of the child must always govern custody decisions, and these cannot be predicted in advance of the marriage. Visitation and parental rights and responsibilities cannot be contracted for similar reasons. Child support cannot be waived because child support is primarily to benefit the children, and thus does not belong to the spouse. Alimony cannot be foreclosed upon because it may be necessary for the spouse to live in a minimal basic lifestyle. Non-financial matters are beyond the scope of the purposes of prenuptial agreements. A prenuptial agreement ensures asset protection in case of divorce and protection for the assets that the spouse brings into the marriage or expects to acquire from outside sources during the marriage. For example, if one party expects a substantial inheritance or a large increase in salary but does not want half of that to be vulnerable in the event of a divorce, the prenuptial agreement allows that party to get married without having to worry. A prenuptial agreement can also limit liability and protect one partner from the other partner's potential creditors. A third benefit that is a valid prenuptial agreement puts the decision of asset allocation in the hands of the couple and out of the hands of the court. When parties divorce without a prenuptial agreement in place, the laws of the state in which they live will control the division of assets. Normally, a judge or jury will determine the allocation of property without much input from the parties on how their possessions will be divided. The prenuptial agreement swings the balance of power back to the couple. For a prenuptial agreement to be enforceable, many states require that the following 4 elements be satisfied. Both parties voluntarily entering into the agreement. Both parties sign the contract and have it witnessed and notarized. Both parties make a full and fair disclosure of their financial worth, and both parties include fair and reasonable economic provisions. To satisfy the 3rd element, each party should bring a detailed list and description of their assets, debts, income, and planned future gifts. To satisfy the 4th element and ensure that the prenuptial agreement is fair and reasonable, each party should review the prenuptial agreement's provisions with their respective attorneys. It is more likely that a court will consider a prenuptial agreement enforceable if each party is represented by counsel and both have their attorneys review the prenuptial agreement prior to signing. Having one attorney represent both sides represents a potential conflict of interest and should be avoided. Bringing up the topic of a premarital agreement does not have to be a frightening subject. Couples on the verge of marrying should not view prenuptial agreements as inherently hostile or contentious. These agreements can be valuable to both parties. By entering a prenuptial agreement, a couple will have demonstrated a high level of commitment and will have discussed topics that are vital to the success of any marriage.
Absolutely agree with that video. It does not have to be negative, boys and girls. It doesn't have to be. It should actually strengthen your communication because you should be transparent anyways, right? In today's day and age, we hold celebrities, politicians, influencers on the highest regard. Like, we scrutinize every little thing they do. We should ask the same for ourselves and also be completely transparent with your significant other. And as I'm watching this, I'm thinking of how it's going to help me plan. I think I'm a good planner, but I have to talk to my family to see what type of inheritance I'm going to get, because that has to play a part in the prenuptial discussion. I don't even know what that is for me. I know there's something. It could be a lot, it could be a little. I honestly have no clue. I honestly have no clue. And that means the same for my future wife. Her mother's property here in different countries, and you have to be completely transparent about it. I have cryptocurrency. I pay taxes on it. I'm completely transparent on that. I'm not trying to avoid the government. I'm going to pay all taxes on all gains. But it's good to have a good financial snapshot of what you're bringing to the table, what they're bringing to the table, what happens in case of a split. You don't want that, but it's insurance, right? You don't want things to happen, but that's why we have insurance. Rather than giving the power to the court, like, hey, yeah, government, yeah, you decide. It doesn't give up child rights, which is great. You know, it protects the child. It doesn't do away with alimony. You have to give alimony, so that's great. So really, it's nothing negative. It's really just transparency to the table. You have to bring debt to the table, so if anyone's hiding anything, it has to surface. So you rather surface now, start together in a clean slate, than start in the ugly slate. So for me, I actually see it as strengthening communication, strengthening your relationship, because you're starting off on the right foot. Well, friends, I found that very informational. I hope you did as well. I'm gonna document me and a wifey's journey. Hopefully when we get down to the aisle in 2022, we'll have everything straightened out and documented so you guys can see along the way what's happening. In the future, I'm going to try to get the wifey in these videos so you can see her opinion, her take on these things. It's just good to document this because this is a real relationship happening in real time. We're not planning or discussing anything prior to this recording. It's just my thought process as we're going through our financial journey together. Been together 5 years now. 2 years ago, we talked about FIRE journey. 1 year ago, we talked about engagement, and now we're talking about actual marriage and kids. So we're like slowly progressing along what the normal dream is or the normal goal is. But I think there's a lot of things that we don't know. So we want to make sure that we cover our grounds. Be sure to tag along as me and the wifey do our money dates together. We have our yearly reviews together, and we'll try to share as transparent as we can those online as well. Please let us know your point of views, what your thoughts and comments are on prenuptials, marriage law, what your experiences have been. We'd love to hear them all. Thank you guys so much for following us on our journey. Catch you on the next one. Bye.